Hey friends, this is Jeff Morgan. Now when I say calcium, what's the first image that comes to mind? Is it this? Or this? Now I believe that the dairy industry has done a fantastic job in getting us to believe that the best source of calcium is cow's milk. Unfortunately, this has led to a hyperconsumption of dairy products which contain components that are harmful to our health, such as saturated animal fat, cholesterol, antibiotics, and even pus, which can be defined as a thick yellowish or greenish opaque liquid produced in infected tissue consisting of dead white blood cells and bacteria with tissue debris and serum. Ugh. All of which have a negative impact on our health. And I would say that's a pretty high price to pay for some calcium. Now first I want to cover where calcium comes from. And no, it doesn't come from cows. Cows consume it. It's a mineral that comes from the earth that makes its way up into the plants that the cows consume. Now what I want to do with this video is show you how easy it is to get fantastic amounts of calcium simply by going to the plant food and avoiding the middle cow, which means avoiding those unwanteds that I mentioned earlier. Now I want you to do your best to remove the association between the words white and calcium. Now because calcium is white and milk is white, people feel that if a food isn't white, then it probably doesn't have calcium in it. But that's wrong. Another association I want to help change with you is with calcium and bone strength. Now although calcium is associated with bone health and strength, many scientists believe that exercise has more to do with preventing osteoporosis than calcium intake does. So that being said, some plant foods that are high in calcium are collard greens, Brussels sprouts, kale, sweet potatoes, chickpeas, navy beans, soybeans, tofu, dried figs, and calcium-fortified plant milks provide adequate amounts as well. Now let me show you an example of how easy it is to get calcium in your diet from plant foods. If I go to Cronometer.com and add some of the foods I'm eating today, for instance, for my salad, I'm combining 2 cups of chopped spinach with 2 cups of chopped kale. I'll add 2 tablespoons of tahini for dressing. Now in addition to the salad, I'll have a cup of chickpeas with a piece of whole wheat toast. Now from this light meal, I've already consumed 37% of my daily calcium needs, along with a tremendous amount of other essential nutrients, including fiber. Now it's not necessary to go for the entire amount that you need in one meal, and best if your nutrients are spread out throughout the day. Now if you're a fan of soy products like I am, and you add foods like tofu and soybeans, which contain large amounts of calcium, you'll be getting to that 100% a lot quicker, as you can see here. But you can see how easy it is to get great amounts of calcium without dairy products. To see an incredible interview video on the scary truth about dairy with Dr. Michael Clapper, you can click on the video link up here or down in the description. Just remember, if you're at all concerned about bone health, just make sure you're involved in regular physical activities that involve resistance. We need our muscles to be pulling on our bones to stimulate bone growth and increase bone density. Without exercise, ingesting calcium can no more increase bone density than eating protein can increase muscle size. It takes weight-bearing exercise to do both of these. There are plenty of plant foods that contain great amounts of calcium. All you really need to do is an online search to find them. So for your health, get your calcium from plant sources.
Randomized controlled clinical trials have found that vitamin D supplements extend one's lifespan. What is the optimal dose? What blood levels associated with living longest? In my 9-part video series on vitamin D back in 2011, I noted that the relationship between vitamin D levels and mortality appeared to be a U-shaped curve, meaning low vitamin D levels were associated with increased mortality, but so were levels that were too high, with the apparent sweet spot around 75 or 80 nanomoles per liter, based on individual studies like this one. Why might higher D levels be associated with higher risk? Well, this was a population study, so you can't be sure which came first. Maybe the vitamin D led to higher risk, or maybe higher risk led to the vitamin D, meaning maybe those who weren't doing as well were prescribed vitamin D. Maybe it's because these were Scandinavian studies where they tend to take a lot of cod liver oil as the vitamin D supplement, one spoonful of which could exceed the tolerable upper daily limit of intake for vitamin A, which could have negative consequences even if you don't inject it into your penis. I was surprised to see cod liver oil listed among the long list of things men have tried to inject into themselves because they felt they were coming up short, though may have ended up even shorter after all the reconstructive surgery. Anyways, the U-shaped curve is old data. An updated meta-analysis has shown that as population vitamin D levels go up, mortality appears to go down and stay down, which is good, because then we don't have to test to see if we're hitting just the right level. Routine testing of vitamin D levels is not recommended. Why? Well, it costs money, and in most people, levels come right up to where you want them with sufficient sun or supplementation, so they figure, what's the point? But also because the test is not very good. Results can be all over the place. What happens when you send a single sample to 1,000 different labs around the world? You'd maybe expect a little variation, but not this. Results from the same sample ranged anywhere from less than 20 to over 100. So depending on what lab your doctor sent your blood sample to, the results could have placed you here or here. So not necessarily very helpful. So what's a safe dose that will likely get us to the purported optimal level? 1,000 units a day should get most people up to the target 75 nanomoles per liter, which is 30 nanograms per milliliter. But by most people, they mean 50%. To get around 85% of the population up to 75 would require 2,000 a day. 2,000 international units a day would shift the curve from here to here. That way, we can take the average person into the desired range without fear of toxicity. You can take too much vitamin D, but you don't tend to see problems until blood levels get up around 250, which would take consistent daily doses in excess of 10,000. Note that if you're overweight, you may want to take 3,000, or if obese, even more than that. If you're over age 70 and not getting enough sun, it may take 3,500 units to get that same 85% chance of bumping your levels past the target. Again, no need for the average person to test and retest, since a few thousand a day should bring almost everyone up without risking toxicity. OK, but then why did the Institute of Medicine set the recommended daily allowance at 600 to 800 units? In fact, official recommendations are all over the map, ranging from just 200 a day all the way up to 10,000 a day. I'll try to cut through the confusion next.
In this video, we are going to look at a food chain and the different roles within it. A food chain shows the sequence of organisms in a habitat that are dependent on the one before as a source of food. In our woodland, one food chain would be grass at the bottom, which is eaten by the rabbits, which are then eaten by the foxes. The arrows represent the energy flow through the chain, and there are lots of other food chains within the woodland, such as this one. A food web shows all of the interconnected food chains in an ecosystem and are much more complex. In every food chain, there are trophic levels. All organisms in a particular trophic level transfer the same amount of energy away from the producers, or base of the food chain. So in our woodland, we have energy transferred from grass to crickets to frogs, and from grass to caterpillars to blackbirds. The caterpillar and the cricket are at the same trophic level, just as the frog and the blackbird are also at the same trophic level. At the base of the food chain are producers. Producers are autotrophs. This means that they are able to manufacture their own food, just like how plants do this by photosynthesis. Then they are primary consumers. These are the second organisms in the food chain, in the second trophic levels. These consume producers and are nearly all herbivores. They only feed on plants. Then there are secondary consumers. These are either carnivores, so they only feed on other animals, or like the mouse, they could be omnivores. They eat a variety of plants and animals. Most humans are omnivores. We eat meat, but we also eat vegetables and grains. Or they can just be insectivores, like the ladybird and frog, which only feed on insects, worms, and other invertebrates. So there we have a food web, food chains, trophic levels, producers, consumers, herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, insectivores, and so the final piece of the puzzle are decomposers. Decomposers break down dead plants and animals and waste and return nutrients back to the soil. Decomposers are very important for an ecosystem. If they weren't there, the plants would not get essential nutrients, and dead matter and waste would pile up. Many kinds of decomposers are microscopic, meaning you need a microscope to see them. Like bacteria, others like fungi can be seen with the naked eye. So there is our key ecology terminology, which you will come across in more detail in future videos.